Hello again, English 2 students. Glad to be back with you. After having talked to the students in my seated course, what I found is probably the case across our team, students on our team, which is that some of you, a few of you, have annotated before, probably informational or nonfiction text. Less of you have fewer of you have annotated literary pieces, and most of you have not really annotated meaningfully at all. So I want to just kind of walk you through. At this point, you should have already done some annotating with either the excerpt I provided from Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, which is a challenging piece, but not as challenging as Shakespeare, or something else selected by your instructor. So now I'm going to walk through this excerpt from the 7 Ages of Man speech. It's a famous speech from the comedy As You Like It by Shakespeare. So here's how I'm going to annotate this text. In part because it's not a hard copy, and I'm not using not using a pen or something. Here's how I'm going to annotate the text. I'll highlight and note unfamiliar words as opposed to, say, circling them. I'll put question marks beside things I'm uncertain about or things that I think you might be uncertain about as we go. I'll put an asterisk, which actually is used for annotating particularly. That symbol is meant for annotation, and so I'll use that when we hit any interesting themes or symbols. And then I'll put an exclamation point for any important textual moments. Also, I'll include just notes or questions that I have along the way, or questions that I think you might have along the way. And then I'll include a little bit of summary at the end. So I really think that in many ways, that's all we need when it comes to annotation. There's more that we could do, but that's a really good foundation for how to annotate. Circling unfamiliar words, question marks by things we don't understand, words we would like more clarity on, or meanings in the text, or events in the text we're confused about or would like to discuss. Starring words, starring parts of the text that have important themes or symbols in them. Exclamation points for important moments in the text that function at a literary level, and then notes or questions along the way as well. Anything else that comes to our mind. Remember that as I'm looking at this, I'm paying attention to the following learning goal. So we're not just annotating anything, we're annotating with this learning goal in mind. Can I determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in the text? This includes figurative and connotative meanings, using context, affixes, or reference materials. And so annotating is one step toward understanding the meanings of words and phrases and the ideas that show up in a text as we're trying to understand meaning. So I'm going to try to keep this short. We're at 3 minutes now, and I hope to do this in only a few minutes to keep this kind of as a mini lesson. But I would say that this might be a good time for the instructor to pause. You can go through this first and then watch me go through it, or you can go through it with your instructor and not hear my voice for the rest of the block. A small gift to you. So here we go. Let's take a look at this speech, 7 Ages of Man. Okay, so let's take a look. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his act being 7 ages. Let's stop there for just a moment. Already we have examples of figurative language and connotative meaning. Connotative meaning is a secondary or sometimes literary meaning that sits on top of the primary meaning of a word. So I'm going to highlight some themes and symbols that show up, and they show up because we're able to identify the connotative meaning of these words. So for example, player has a literal meaning and probably a few literal meanings. But also, and I'm using an asterisk just to note this quickly, it also has connotative meanings. Okay, so what is the connotative meaning here? This is true with the language, all the world's a stage. We have another theme. We're opening with a theme. They have their exits and their entrances. And I won't go through all of these, but yet again, we're now hitting on some words that, what might that mean? I'm sure many of you who are hearing this, you already know what they mean by exit and entrance, but it might mean more than we think. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. If we could maybe unpack that a little bit, we might have a theme on our hands, because this might be talking about the ways in which they are born and die, but it also may have something to do with successes and failures. They have their high points and their low points, where they're taking center stage or off to the side. It goes on. And one man in his time plays many parts. I would highlight this, not so much because I don't know the meaning of plays many parts. It's not unfamiliar in that way, but I'm going to put a question mark because it's uncertain specifically what might be referenced here. What does it mean to play many parts? Different careers, different roles, as in like a parent, a son or a daughter, a spouse, or does it mean something else to say play many parts? And I think that we'll find through context clues it might mean not only the roles that we serve, but it might mean the ages, the stages, the seasons of our lives. And obviously we see that in this next line, his act being 7 ages. Okay, so I'm going to read on for a moment. And then we'll go back and do some more annotating. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. So mewling is an interesting word. I'm sure most of you used it at least once already today. But I'm going to presume that some of you just don't know what that word means. It's unfamiliar to you. So here's this word that is unfamiliar to us. And even if you could maybe use context clues to guess what it means, it might be something worth looking up. Mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail, unwilling to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. So let's maybe a good moment to stop and to go back to think through this and attempt to provide some annotation here. So again, I've referenced how you can simply right-click and define a word. And we see that this means to cry feebly, to whimper. Okay, and so really quickly we can resolve what certain words that we don't know mean. Some things are a little bit more elusive and a little bit more difficult. I'm going to go through and keep annotating this now that I've read another part of the passage. So, at first the infant mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And I'm going to highlight this just to kind of keep up with themes. Remember that I use either a star or some kind of symbol like it for theme. We have the seasons of life and the passage of time here. That strikes me as an interesting theme that's presented. And then the lover, sighing like a furnace. So now we're dealing again with like connotation and symbol. So what is the connotation of this, right? We have a question here. There's uncertainty here, and also this might be an exclamation point because this may be important in the context of the act. By the way, why might this be important? Because sighing like a furnace, when we're talking about a lover, has a few different potential meanings. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad. So woeful is a word that's going to give me a clue. Let's define woeful. filled with sorrow or misery. So any of you who thought the sighing like a furnace was about the passion of love, I mean, that's still a possible reading. Woeful indicates this may be more about loss. So again, this may be more about loss or absence. And in fact, because it goes on to talk about the season of being a soldier, it's not unreasonable to think that maybe this lover who is sighing like a furnace is doing so because he misses the person he's in love with. Either way, it's a potential theme. So we have we have a possible theme emerge here. And that is in part because we're identifying unfamiliar words, right? So this is about the loss of love. The frustration of romance. Or separation. So these are all things that strike me as worth thinking through, potential themes and interesting ideas in the piece, and it's all kind of hinging around this sighing like a furnace phrase. Okay, so going back, and then the lover, sighing like a furnace with a woeful ballad, made to his mistress's eyebrow. Eyebrow stuff, okay. Made to his mistress's eyebrow. Just a strange phrase. So if anything deserves a question mark, right? There's some uncertainty around that one. Just to address, at least to my awareness, and I'm sure your instructor might have commentary on this, I think the mistress's eyebrow, it could be either emphasizing the fact that that this lover is looking directly into her face, into her eyes, could be emphasizing the beauty of her eyes, or the beauty of her eyebrows, but I don't think it's quite that. Reading on. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths, and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. What an interesting phrase, right? So, what are the meanings potentially found in this phrase, right? So we have another question mark. I would be circling this if I were looking at this hard copy. There's uncertainty in this.